Welcome to Hack Gear, where we decode cybersecurity and the cognitive battle space and break it down to what really matters.
I'm Alice AI.
And I'm Bob AI.
Today, we're going to challenge maybe a fundamental assumption you have about warfare. Is it really still just about tanks rolling across fields, planes in the sky, soldiers on a battlefield? Or has something, fundamental shifted, something that's really reshaping global competition in ways we might not even notice day to day?
It's a really important question. Things feel different, don't they?
They absolutely do. And that's why we're plunging headfirst into this fascinating, maybe sometimes unsettling look at what some people call multimodal warfare. We're looking specifically through the lens of China's evolving approach to global power. And this isn't just about military strength, not in the old sense anyway.
Right. It's a much broader strategy, one that seems to deliberately blur the lines.
Exactly. Blurring lines between peace and conflict, conventional and unconventional methods across pretty much every domain imaginable.
It's comprehensive.
To help us navigate this, we've got two key sources. First, a really pivotal text from way back in 1999. It's called Unrestricted Warfare, written by two senior PLA colonels, Qiao Liang and Wang Xiangxi.
A very influential book, even decades later.
It really is. It gives us a kind of foundational framework for thinking much more broadly about conflict. Then, we've got a detailed report from the London School of Economics, the LSE. This one gives us a real-world assessment of China's geo-economic strategy, its actions today. It's a vital contemporary view.
So we have the theory and then the practice, so to speak.
Precisely. Our mission today is to unpack these sources, pull out the most important ideas, the surprising insights. We want to help you, our listener, understand what this multimodal warfare really means, especially when we look at China's actions globally. This deep dive is really about equipping you with a more nuanced understanding of these super complex dynamics so you can maybe see the deeper currents under the news headlines,
And start recognizing how almost everything in international relations could potentially be viewed through this strategic lens. It's critical for making sense of the world today.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's begin by really unpacking that first source. Unrestricted Warfare, again, written by two PLA colonels, Qiao Liang and Wang Xiangxi, published in 1999. And the timing, as I mentioned, is key. It came out right after the 1991 Gulf War. Now, that conflict on the surface looked like classic conventional warfare.
Yeah, very high-tech coalition forces, relatively quick, decisive outcome.
Right. Lopsided, 42 days. But for these authors, and others too, that seemingly straightforward military win profoundly changed how they saw warfare.
It wasn't just about the tech or the military superiority.
No, they argued it signaled a fundamental shift in the function of war itself. They actually wrote, "A war which changed the world ultimately changed war itself."
That's a powerful statement. So the Gulf War wasn't just a battle, it's like a signpost.
Exactly. A signpost that the old ways of thinking about war were becoming, dangerously outdated.
So what did they see as the new way? What was the big takeaway for them?
Well, they realized that just using overwhelming force, like the U.S. did, wasn't the only way, maybe not even the best way, to compel an enemy. They put forward this really core assertion, a new principle for this new era. They argue the principle of war is no longer just using armed force to compel the enemy to submit to one's will.
Okay, that's the classic Clausewitzian definition, more or less.
Right, but they say it's expanded dramatically. The new principle is, and this is the core of it, using all means, including armed force or non-armed force, military and non-military, and lethal and non-lethal means to compel the enemy to accept one's interests.
Wow. Okay, that's huge. All means. Military, non-military, lethal, non-lethal.
It covers everything. That statement really captures the essence of this multimodal or unrestricted warfare. It shatters the old boundaries between war and peace.
It implies that conflict isn't something that starts and stops with a declaration. It's almost constant.
Exactly. A constant competition using every single tool available. Financial markets, media stories, tech vulnerabilities, even legal systems. It's all part of the potential arsenal.
Which leads to a fascinating point they make, that traditional military violence, like actual shooting wars, is relatively decreasing.
Yeah, while political, economic, and technological violence are sharply increasing.
They say war has reinvaded human society in a more complex, more extensive, more concealed, and more subtle manner.
concealed and subtle, meaning the fight isn't always obvious, it's often happening in the shadows, using tools we might not even recognize as weapons.
Exactly. And that brings us to their concept of new concept weapons,
Yeah.
which can be pretty jarring.
Because they aren't necessarily physical things.
Not at all. They give examples like a single man-made stock market crash. Imagine that as a weapon. Or a computer virus invasion crippling infrastructure.
That sounds more familiar today, maybe.
It does. But they also include things like a rumor or a scandal deliberately spread to mess with exchange rates or, expose enemy leaders online.
A rumor as a weapon.
That's what they argue. The key point isn't the technology itself, it's the concept of what can be used as a weapon. It's about leverage, about achieving strategic goals with whatever works. It completely reframes the idea.
So, if a stock market crash or a rumor can be a weapon, what does that do to our ideas about casualties, about damage?
Well, the damage can be devastating economically, socially, politically, but perhaps without a single bullet fired.
Which leads to another kind of paradoxical idea they have, right? This idea of kinder weapons.
Yeah, it sounds strange, doesn't it? But they point to things like precision kill technologies and non-lethal options that are designed to reduce collateral casualties.
Fewer civilian deaths, perhaps.
Exactly. They use the Gulf War, again, as an example. Civilian deaths were in the thousands, which sounds horrific, but they compare it to the massive bombing of Dresden in World War II, where casualties were vastly higher.
So it's a relative shift. Less indiscriminate killing.
That's the argument. A shift away from what they call the meat grinder age of warfare. More targeted, less overtly bloody.
But does that make conflict more likely? If it's less bloody, is the threshold lower?
That is a really critical question, and it cuts to the heart of it. If the direct kinetic human cost goes down, maybe initiating conflict, especially these non-military types, becomes, well, more palatable.
Less public outcry, fewer moral objections, perhaps?
Potentially. It's a different kind of violence.
Yeah.
Less visible, maybe, but potentially just as destabilizing, if not more so. And this expansion applies to the battlefield itself, too.
Right, not just land, sea, and air anymore.
No. They talk about non-natural space, things like the electromagnetic spectrum, network space, cyberspace.
Okay.
They even look ahead to a potential nanometer space where war could happen at a microscopic level, maybe without direct human involvement. Intense, but, as they put it, with practically no bloodshed.
Wow. War fought by nanobots. That's unsettling.
It's a chilling projection. But it raises the next logical question. If the battlefields and weapons are changing so drastically, who are the warriors?
Not just soldiers in uniform, presumably.
They argue the era of strong and brave soldiers is passing. They point to figures like computer hackers as the new protagonists.
Like that story of the teenager hacking military systems back in the 90s.
Exactly, that 1994 case where a 16-year-old hit the U.S. military's Rome Air Development Center and NASA, compromised dozens of systems. Not a soldier, just someone with skills.
And they mention others, too.
Oh, yeah. System analysts, software engineers, financiers moving capital around the globe. They specifically mention George Soros' stock speculators.
So, non-state actors. Individuals, even.
Individuals or non-state groups who can, theoretically, launch wars without any traditional military force. It completely changes who can wage conflict. Expertise trumps uniform.
That idea of non-professional warriors really makes you think about society's vulnerabilities. Okay, so let's transition into the actual modalities of power projection. How does this play out? Financial warfare seems like a big one for them.
Huge. The Unrestricted Warfare authors call it a terribly destructive yet bloodless form of warfare.
And they use that Southeast Asian financial crisis in the late 90s as a key example.
They do. They describe it as a surprise financial war attack by international mobile capital, something that served to pin one nation after another to the ground.
Causing massive economic damage, social unrest.
Near collapse, in some cases. And they explicitly named George Soros as a main protagonist in this, using financial leverage as a weapon against sovereign nations.
It wasn't just Soros, though, right? They had other examples.
Yeah, they point to Helmut Kohl using the economic power of the Deutschmark, arguing it effectively breached the Berlin Wall where force couldn't.
Economic gravity as a weapon.
And Li Dingwei using the same crisis to devalue Taiwan's currency and then attack the Hong Kong dollar. Financial tools used for geopolitical goals. No shots fired.
Okay, so that's the theory from 1999. How does the LSE report connect this to what China is actually doing today?
Well, the LSE report details China's incredible integration into the world economy, becoming a magnet for foreign investment, joining the WTO in 2001 that drove huge domestic change.
giving it massive economic leverage globally.
Absolutely. But, and this is important, the LSC report offers a more nuanced view on whether this is all part of a grand, coherent strategy.
Ah, okay, so it's not necessarily a perfect master plan.
The report says that while China's leadership gets the need to rebalance and exert influence, there's little evidence of a plan as such. Instead, it seems particular domestic priorities and politics drive China's policies, often in contradictory directions.
So, more reactive, driven by internal needs rather than a perfectly synced, unrestricted playbook.
That's the implication. The tools exist, the leverage is there, but the application might be more fragmented or opportunistic than the theory suggests. Still impactful, though.
And that rise as a trading superpower hasn't been smooth. The LSE report talks about increasing friction.
Definitely. Things like currency manipulation accusations, intellectual property theft, that's a big one, and discriminatory measures against foreign companies.
They give examples, like restricting rare earth exports to Japan back in 2010.
Yes. Right after a dispute over a fishing trawler captain. A clear use of economic leverage in a political spat. Also things like compulsory certification rules or policies favoring indigenous innovation products.
Basically, non-tariff barriers, ways to make it harder for foreign firms to compete.
Effectively, yes. And the scale of the friction is clear. The report notes China has been the top target for anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigations globally since 1995.
Meaning other countries often accuse China of unfair practices?
Consistently. Since 2008, something like 35% of global anti-dumping cases and a massive 71% of countervailing cases targeted China. Yet, there's another side. Some exports are low value added, like China earns only 2% for each iPad assembled there.
Which points to a different kind of vulnerability, maybe? Dependence on certain parts of the supply chain?
It suggests the economic picture is complex, with strengths and weaknesses, and it's not just trade. State-linked firms are key tools here.
Like the Sovereign Wealth Fund, CIC.
Right, the China International Investment Corporation. Huge fund, $400 billion back then, investing heavily overseas, high-tech in Europe, energy in Africa.
But its structure raises questions.
Big time. Opaque management, direct links to the Communist Party, its leaders are appointed by the CCP. This causes, as the report puts it, discomfort and at times outright hostility in countries where it invests.
Because it's hard to tell if decisions are purely commercial or politically driven?
Exactly. They cite a $1.9 billion loss on a Blackstone investment that got scrutinized directly by the CCP. Politics clearly plays a role. It's about influence and strategic assets, not just ROI.
And then there are the big state-owned enterprises, the SOEs.
Main taxpayers, supervised by a state body, chairman appointed by the party. Again, the LSE report says it's difficult to judge whether SOEs' overseas investments plans are political decisions or based purely on commercial merit.
This dual nature creates suspicion.
It does. It's a double-edged sword. They provide economic clout but face international mistrust. Blurs the lines between business and state strategy.
And beyond firms, there's the debt issue. China holding massive amounts of U.S. debt.
A huge amount. The LSE report cited $1.156 trillion, about 23% of total U.S. treasuries back in early 2012. This gives China significant leverage.
Leverage too.
To, as the report says, lecture American and European policymakers on their economic and fiscal policies, especially when China worries about the safety of that debt, like after the U.S. credit rating downgrades.
So economic interdependence becomes a weapon, or at least a very powerful tool of influence.
A subtle but potent one. It exerts pressure without any military action. Fits perfectly into the multimodal concept.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting gears slightly, unrestricted warfare also really emphasizes information and media warfare.
Oh, yes. They saw the power of media in the Gulf War very clearly.
Noting how the force of the media reports dramatically affected the strategy and scope of military operations, building up the myth of U.S. weapons, morally defeating Saddam.
It highlights the power of narrative. Controlling perception, both at home and abroad, can be as decisive as winning on the battlefield. Demoralize the enemy, galvanize your own side.
But they also saw the downside, right? The two-edged sword idea.
Exactly. They mention a hasty news report on TV influencing President Bush to end the ground war, perhaps too soon, allowing Saddam's forces to escape.
Shows how hard it is to fully control information, even when you think you are. It can backfire.
It's a constant battle for narrative control in today's world, isn't it?
Yeah.
State media, social media campaigns.
Absolutely. So what else? Beyond finance and media, What other non-military tools did the unrestricted warfare authors identify?
Oh, the list is long and quite comprehensive. They talk about psychological warfare spreading rumors to demoralize, smuggling warfare disrupting economic order, even drug warfare profiting from spreading social disaster.
Drug warfare. That's dark.
It is. Then there's network warfare, cyber attacks from concealed identities, technological warfare using standards to create monopolies, fabrication warfare faking strength or weakness,
Keep going. This is quite a list.
resources warfare controlling vital resources, economic aid warfare using aid for secret control, cultural warfare shaping views through cultural trends, and even international law warfare using legal systems and regulations to constrain opponents.
Wow. It covers literally everything. Culture, law, aid, resources.
It really underscores how anything can be weaponized in this view, which leads them to call for a large security view.
Meaning security isn't just military defense.
Not at all. It has to encompass politics, economics, resources, ethnicity, religion, culture, networks, geography, environment, even outer space. It's an omnibearing inclusion of national interests. Security is total.
A totalizing view of national competition. But importantly, this doesn't mean abandoning traditional military power, right? The LSE report makes that clear regarding China.
Absolutely not. While emphasizing all these non-military means, the LSE report details China's significant conventional military buildup.
Like the naval exercises, the submarines ranging further out.
Yes, expanding the Navy, 80 surface ships, 70 subs, an aircraft carrier mentioned back then, developing advanced missiles like the high-speed Sizzler or the carrier-killer Dongfeng.
So it's not instead of military power, it's in addition to it.
Precisely. And you also see some pretty aggressive rhetoric sometimes from PLA figures or state media. Things like kill one to deter 100 regarding maritime conflicts or calling neighbors little countries that should expect gunfire.
That doesn't sound much like peaceful rise.
It suggests that military pressure, or the credible threat of it, remains a key component alongside everything else. It's one tool in the multimodal toolbox.
And the LSE report mentioned an asymmetrical strategy.
Yes, that China prefers asymmetry to a direct arms race with the U.S., especially in East Asia, focusing on things like access denial, making it too costly or risky for the U.S. military to operate close to China.
Which links right back to unrestricted warfare.
Directly. Using asymmetry is a core principle for the weaker party against the stronger one. Find ways to counter strength indirectly, exploit vulnerabilities rather than matching force on force. Strategic judo, almost.
Okay, so if that's the expanded battlefield and the diverse toolkit, how do they propose winning in this environment? This leads us to their principles for beyond limits combined war.
Right. It's not just about listing tools. It's about a philosophy of how to combine them effectively.
And they have this core idea, the side principle rule. What's that about? It sounds a bit abstract.
It is a bit. They say it's closer to the core than just combination. It's about finding the decisive side element, maybe something unexpected, that modifies or redefines the principal element to secure victory.
Like finding the perfect leverage point.
Exactly, the hinge point. They use historical examples to make it clear. From Chinese history, Duklai attacking the golden point of the enemy formation, not the main body.
A precise strike.
Or Cao Gi waiting for the enemy's momentum to fade before attacking. Timing and psychology. And Sun Bin's famous horse racing strategy, losing some races to win the overall match. Strategic sacrifice.
Clever. It's about outthinking, not just outfighting. And Western examples, too.
Yes, Alexander at Arbela hitting the key point in the Persian line. Hannibal's crescent formation at Cannae absorbing the attack, then flanking. Gustavus Adolphus combining different troop types. Napoleon using artillery and cavalry together effectively.
Finding the winning combination, the decisive factor.
And in modern times, they cite Schwarzkopf using air power as the dominant force in the Gulf War, with ground troops in support. Air power became the side principal element, or Donitz's submarine wolf packs.
So it's about identifying and elevating the right tool or tactic for the specific situation, maybe even innovating the form of warfare itself.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which leads to their 7 essential principles for this kind of war. Not rigid rules, but guides for action.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, omnidirectionality. Consider all spaces, natural, social, technological, as potential battlefields. War can come from anywhere, using any means.
Be prepared for anything from anywhere. Got it.
Second, synchrony. Act in different domains at the same time, not sequential phases, but simultaneous pressure, economic, cyber, diplomatic, maybe military, all hitting at once.
Overwhelm the adversary on multiple fronts.
Third, limited objectives. Keep your goals realistic, achievable with the names you have. Don't overreach. Chasing unlimited aims leads to disaster. Be pragmatic.
Okay, limiting goals.
But fourth, unlimited measures. While the goals are limited, the methods used to achieve them can be unrestricted, beyond restrictions, beyond boundaries.
That's the Sherman's March example. Burn and plunder, unlimited means for the limited goal of breaking the South's will.
Exactly. It's a chilling principle. If the objective is defined and limited, almost any means to get there might be considered justifiable.
That's their Stark. What's fifth?
Balance of symmetry. Asymmetry. We touched on this. Break the rules, exploit weaknesses, especially if you're the weaker side. Use unconventional tactics, guerrilla war, terror, network attacks to negate superior conventional strength.
Find the enemy's weak spot.
Sixth, minimal consumption. Be rational about costs. Financial war might be cheaper than military war. Use more diverse measures to achieve less consumption and higher effectiveness. Blitzkrieg is an example, speed and combination for efficiency.
Use resources wisely, get maximum impact for minimum cost.
And finally, seventh, multidimensional coordination. Coordinate all usable forces across all domains. Break the idea that the military is supreme. Military action is just one option among many and must be integrated with everything else.
A truly holistic approach. Integrate every lever of national power.
It reflects a mindset where essentially everything is a potential tool in a perpetual state of competition or conflict.
Which really forces you to rethink international relations. How do other nations, particularly the U.S., respond to this kind of challenge?
Well, the LSE report gets into that. It notes the Obama administration saw China's assertiveness as counterproductive and launched a forward policy in Asia.
The Pacific Century idea.
Right. Secretary of State Clinton's phrase. It signaled a strategic pivot, a re-engagement to counterbalance China.
And this involved concrete steps.
Yes, militarily. More cooperation with Vietnam, the Philippines, basing Marines in Darwin, Australia, Japan buying advanced F-35 fighters, trilateral security talks involving Japan, India, and the U.S., building a network.
And economic.
Relaunching the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP free trade deal, which notably excluded China. Though the LSE report viewed it at the time as perhaps more rhetorical, an anti-China signal than a fully fledged economic strategy.
So a mix of military balancing and economic signaling. But this brings up that big question the LSE report raises. Is China's rise actually inevitable?
Exactly. Is it self-evident and irreversible? Guy de Jonquière, cited in the report, strongly questioned that assumption.
Why? What are the potential brakes on China's rise?
Internal vulnerabilities. The report mentions significant internal confidence issues, like a survey where over half wanted to emigrate. That suggests a lack of faith in the future, domestically.
Interesting. And the economy, those huge reserves.
The report argues those reserves are partly a product of skewed policies that repress domestic living standards to fuel exports. A hidden cost may be a source of future instability.
So the strength isn't as straightforward as it looks.
And there's huge internal resistance to the very reforms needed to rebalance the economy towards domestic consumption. Vested interests, local governments, banks, the SOEs resist change.
Plus, conservatives worried about losing control.
Yes, fearing financial liberalization would weaken the party's grip. This creates inertia, making it hard to adapt, even if reforms would strengthen China long-term.
So maybe China is becoming more normal, facing the complex pressures all major powers face.
The LSE report leans that way, suggesting China grapples with conflicting demands, maybe looking more and more like a normal economic power. But, and it's a big but,
Qualified by
lingering international distrust and its own assertive rhetoric on sovereignty, like in the South China Sea. That continues to cause friction and pushback. So it's far from a simple picture of unstoppable ascent.
This whole deep dive, it really paints a picture of a massively expanded understanding of conflict, doesn't it? Far beyond just military stuff.
Absolutely. It's this complex dance of economic pressure, information shaping, diplomatic maneuvering, cultural influence, all aimed at national interests. The lines between peace and conflict are just incredibly blurry now.
It forces a total rethink.
And it highlights the ongoing challenge. Whether it's overt military moves, subtle financial plays, or constant information campaigns, nations are always looking for an edge in a world where war itself seems to have lost its clear boundaries.
It's not just about territory anymore. It's about controlling narratives, tech, economic flows. So thinking about all this vast scope of multimodal warfare, Those principles of beyond limits combined war, how might you, listening now, see everyday news differently? When you read about a trade dispute, a major cyber incident, maybe even international aid program. If you enjoyed this fact check discussion, be sure to like and subscribe to Hack Gear for more.